Dr. John Petrucelli, and I'm a saxophonist, composer, and inaugural postdoctoral fellow in jazz history at Oberlin College and Conservatory. Over the past 2 years since the start of the pandemic, I've set out to try and identify and test play every brand and model of saxophone and as much gear in the saxophone world as I can get my hands on. Today, I want to share with you one of the most special and iconic horns I've come across in my playing career, the Yamaha YSS-82ZRS, and talk to you about 5 things I love and 5 things you should know before buying one. I want to kick things off by talking about the looks, because this is a beautiful instrument and unique. In its design, it actually references 3 different periods of Yamaha design language, and I want to talk about each one individually. So first of all, and most obviously, the body tube is a direct restatement of the Yamaha 62R. The R, in some circles, standing for Rousseau, and in Yamaha world, referencing very simply the bent neck, one-piece soprano saxophone design. This was something that was initially inspired by Eugene Rousseau, saxophone guru and classical saxophonist who was working as a consultant with Yamaha during this time period. And the bent neck design was supposed to provide homogeny of sound as well as a slightly higher degree of resistance over the normal straight one-piece Yamaha 62 soprano saxophone. It's important to know that the 62 itself became the standard bearer and in many circles is still a hugely popular saxophone because of its homogeny of sound, the bright and brilliant sound that it produces, as well as the ergonomic design is truly excellent and was a foundation point for all contemporary saxophones. Now, while the body tube is a direct restatement of the Yamaha 62, the keywork actually is shared on this instrument. The 82ZR keywork is shared with the Yamaha 875EX2. And so, while the body tube is different, the ergonomics are the same, which is something I'm going to talk about again later. Finally, we have a really beautiful engraving on this horn, which is consistent with the design for the 82Z series. It's not the same as the 875EX2. So there's actually 3 different evolutionary strands of design DNA coming together in one place here. Next is the history, and it's impossible to discuss this saxophone and why Yamaha brought it back into the lineup without talking about the history of the instrument. The 62R was a unicorn instrument in its day. It was not made in large numbers, and particularly the silver-plated models are today almost impossible to find on the secondary market. Why is this instrument so popular? Well, Wayne Shorter. Because on the classical side, actually, these instruments were not performed much. The normal Yamaha 62 offered almost all of the same advantages that the 62R had. However, in the late 1970s, early 80s, I'm not sure of the exact date, Wayne Shorter chose this instrument, perhaps during a tour of Japan with Weather Report, it seems. He stopped by the Yamaha factory and chose a Yamaha 62RS, the S standing for silver plate. Although he's also been known to play the 62 normal plate during this time. I think it might just have something to do with the terms of the endorsement deal, or even potentially that a horn was undergoing repairs and he had more than one, which seems likely, to be honest, because in the late 1970s, Wayne Shorter made a definitive switch to soprano saxophone as his main instrument, which is unusual in the saxophone community. Usually as saxophonists, we have a primary instrument of either alto, tenor, or baritone, with the soprano standing by as a palate cleanser from our main instrument, or in support of another main saxophone. However, a handful of saxophonists, notably Shorter, and of course we have to mention Dave Liebman, made a switch to soprano saxophone as their main instrument. Obviously this is all coming on the heels of John Coltrane's use of soprano saxophone, which really helped define and establish the use of soprano saxophone in a saxophone performance context, both in the classical community and in the jazz community. It's Shorter's use of his 62R on recordings such as Atlantis that really drew me to investigate this instrument and to ultimately buy this example for my own performance career. The 82ZR, and this S model in particular, has incredible world-class intonation. In fact, I think that of every soprano saxophone I've ever played, this has the best intonation. And I am comparing this directly to the Yamaha 875EX2, Yanagisawa, and Selmer. I think that it is actually difficult to play a note out of tune on this instrument once you get the mouthpiece dialed in on the cork. In conjunction with the intonation is the sound. This has an incredibly homogeneous sound. It's rich, dark, and I would draw comparisons to an oboe in terms of its responsiveness and in terms of a slight nasal tone at the top of the sound. It sounds like nothing else. If you're playing a R model, either 62R or 82ZR, you know it because it has a very unique back pressure, slight resistance that you're pushing against that creates a truly unique response. The last of the 5 likes or loves that I want to talk to you about today are the cool factor and the rarity, because let's just be honest, we are playing instruments that we are inspired by. And over the last 2 years, I've been inspired by this instrument. The instrument itself is extremely rare. I know when I take this out on a gig that there are really no other people who are going to be playing this instrument. And I get comments because of the bent neck. I have people ask me, is it a saxello? Is it some other branch of the saxophone tree other than soprano saxophone, because it's such a unique and gorgeous instrument? So those are my 5 loves about the 82ZRS. Looks, history, intonation, sound, and then the cool factor, the rarity factor. You just don't see a lot of these horns out there. I should also note before I move on that Wayne Shorter actually moved off of the 62R series sometime in the early 2000s when he formed his new quartet. The instrument that he's currently playing on seems to me to be a 875, the original model in silver plate, which is a 2-piece design. Moving on, I want to share with you 5 things that I feel like you should know before running out and buying an 82ZR or, for example, this 82ZRS. And first and foremost at the top of my list is the case. We don't often think about case design when we're buying a soprano saxophone, and the main reason for that is because there are so many aftermarket cases from amazing companies, for example, BAM, who make custom cases for saxophones. However, because of the nature of the bent neck soprano saxophone design, this horn doesn't fit in most aftermarket cases. Now, Yamaha provides you a case which fits, and that's great, but it's 2022, and to me, The Yamaha case design, both for the 875 series and the 82Z series, is outdated at this point. The case materials, to me, are not going to hold up well over time. The size of the cases are not hugely portable, and I just think that there's a better option. And for anyone at Yamaha listening to this, I have had a lot of great interactions with the Los Angeles Atelier, for example. I hope that the case design is updated, or that you guys partner with a aftermarket case company to provide some more options, particularly in the travel case genre for these instruments. Especially for unique instruments like the 82ZR, there's just not a whole lot of options at present day. Secondly, and this doesn't bother me, but I know that it does bother certain people, is just neck choice. So we live in an era of the 875 EX2, the Selmer Series 3, and several different Yanagisawa choices. And these brands offer, and these models offer, two neck solutions. So you can choose whether or not you want to play on a straight neck or on a bent neck. Obviously, the bent neck is going to provide slightly more resistance than the straight neck, and the 82ZR has a one-piece bent neck design, and so there's just no option there. If you test play this horn and don't like it, then you are going to move on either to a straight 82Z, which is a very compelling choice, by the way, or an 875 EX2, at least in the Yamaha line, which is going to give you the ability to switch between different necks. That never bothered me, and frankly, I prefer a one-piece design because you can just immediately put the mouthpiece onto the neck and you don't have to think about fitting the neck to the body of the horn. And it's one less touch point for potential problems, and especially, touring with multiple saxophones on the road, you're going to have issues, and this just creates less potential problems without having to change the neck, but you have less choice because of that. Okay. Number 3 is going to be, because of the rarity, that actually counts against the instrument as well. So you're not going to have the opportunity to test play multiple 82ZRs against each other. They're rare instruments, and you're not going to be able to walk into a shop and find 3, 4, 5 ZR instruments in different lacquer colors. They're just not that available. And Yamaha in particular was impacted by the pandemic and really deferred to the safety of their workers. Yamaha has been making fewer saxophones since the pandemic, and of course the ZR, which is already a niche instrument, was affected by that. So trying to find, for example, an 82ZR in silver is going to be difficult, and I doubt that you're going to have the ability to put up a ZR against, for example, a 62R to compare. And I present that example because I've been looking for years for a Yamaha 62R to play at the same time as this 82ZR. That would be an amazing video, and to any 62R owners who would want to hook me up with an instrument to test play for a couple days, hey, reach out to me. I'll put my email in the comments below. I still, at the time of making this video, it's August 21st, 2022, still have never actually test played a 62R, which are even rarer and more difficult to find, especially in good condition, to an 82ZR. However, that works to your benefit on the secondary market. These horns do hold their value. They are in demand by saxophonists in the know, and 62Rs and 82ZRs really are primo instruments that in many cases appreciate on the secondary market. Okay, moving on. I want to talk to you about ergonomics because I think there are pros and cons to the ergonomics on this instrument. First of all, the ergonomics on the 62 Yamaha, the straight 62, which I have played for many years, are incredible, and I kind of wish they didn't change it, or at least didn't change it as dramatically as they did on the 82ZR, because this has the 875 keywork, as I referenced, and it's large, and that makes it feel larger than it actually is in hand. This body tube is actually, you know, quite narrow because it's a body tube from the 70s. However, this keywork makes it feel much bigger in hand than it actually is. If you're going between a larger instrument a lot, though, for example, tenor or alto saxophone, that might be a pro to you because it doesn't feel like you're transferring to a significantly smaller instrument. It feels the amount of change between alto and tenor and the 82ZR is lessened because of the size of the keywork. On the other side of this equation is the ergonomics, the playing ergonomics of this saxophone, which I think are incredible. So the nature of the bent neck one piece means that this instrument almost drops into your mouth as you get it into playing position. And this, to me, is the most comfortable soprano saxophone I've ever played. And I'm referencing essentially every contemporary soprano out there. There's just something about the angle of this bent neck and the way that it fits into your mouth that makes it super comfortable to play, and it's a very natural playing position. Okay, last but not least is the cool or rarity factor, which I mentioned again. So the last thing to consider is that there's just not a lot of these horns out there, not a lot of opportunities to demo, and the secondary prices are high. So if you're trying to test play this horn and you don't own it yet, then that's a barrier to entry that you have to consider. So let's recap, okay? On the pros, the looks of this instrument, its history, and it's an icon of design. The intonation and the sound of the instrument are incredibly unique, and you're not going to sound like any other soprano saxophone on this horn. And finally, the rarity factor. 5 things to consider before getting into this horn are case and aftermarket case options are limited, that there are limited opportunities to demo, you don't get to choose your neck, which just limits your choice, and the ergonomics are something that you want to put in your hand before you decide to lay out the money for this horn. If you like the 875 EX2, then you're going to like the keyboard on the 82ZR because they're the same. And if you're looking for something that feels tighter and that kind of you hunker into the instrument, then this isn't for you. You might want to look at something like the Selmer Series 3. Alright guys, before I sign off today, I want to put my new book on your radar. Back in May, I published Unsung Hero, Transcriptions of Tenor Saxophonist Charlie Rouse. It's got transpositions for E-flat, B-flat, concert, and bass clef instruments. So there is no excuse. Go out and get this book if you dig Charlie Rouse. I've got transcriptions from across his career, including all of the famous Thelonious Monk tunes, his work with Spiral, and his work as a solo artist. Also, feel free to reach out to me about lessons and my horn concierge service, where I help you pick out equipment and horns specifically tailored to your needs as a saxophonist and an artist. For all of you who made it to the end of this video, thank you for your support. Over and out.